Today's news, 14 complete the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force recruitment training and former Scotiabank BVI Managing Director pens open letter to the youth.
Premier Foy attributes decline in revenues from the financial services industry to global pandemic. All this and so much more when 284 News returns.
There's a reason you get up on a morning. A reason you pick yourself up, start the day. Maybe it's sheer grit. Maybe it's your ethics. Maybe it's because you know people like you are waiting. For people just like you. We all have our reasons, and for Republic Bank, that reason is you. Every little thing, every big thing. It's all about making a difference in your life. Because after 182 years, if it's one thing we're sure about, is that the difference is you. We're here to help.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Welcome everybody. It's Monday, June 22nd, 2020. I know it's a little bit gloomy outside based on the Saharan desert, which we're going to get into, but I am Ron Grant.
And I am Kyla Kamisha Forbes.
And we are still in the beautiful British Virgin Islands.
Most definitely.
Before we get into our newscast today, continuing with its vision to lead it through the territory's compliance with international standards on transparency and exchange of information for tax purposes by delivering services that create value for all stakeholders, the International Tax Authority, known as the ITA, announces the launch of its new website, which is bviita.vg.com. The website provides a greater understanding about the statutory body, which was established on December 3rd, 2018, and includes information about the establishment of the ITA as well as its core responsibilities, the BVI Financial Accounting Reporting System, exchange of information, agreements managed and executed by the ITA, legislation which governs the ITA, as well as many other contributions to different areas. Now, visitors can again visit that at BVI. That's BVIFIA.com and find out a lot more about this institution. I think it's in this day and age, Kyla, it's a step in the right direction, and we're glad to see them having an updated website.
Most definitely.
Continuing on the local scene, on Thursday, June 18th, 2020, 14 officers passed out and officially became full-fledged police constables of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. Now, this cohort was inclusive of 8 males and 6 females. The ceremony was opened with reverence to the Almighty God and followed by an explosive rendition of the national anthem by our very own Miss Bria Smith, the reigning Miss BVI. His Excellency, the Governor Augustus J.U. Jasper, in his remarks, expressed his joy to be among the graduates in audience. He thanked the recruits for joining the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, especially during such a time as now, and for dedicating their life and career to serving with integrity. He said, and I quote, "When the going gets going, you keep going." He applauded them. He thanked all persons involved in molding the officers into what they have turned out to be, and concluded by telling them that they shall have immense pride knowing that they have dedicated their life and career to being a part of one of the most noble and important professions in the world. Premier, the Honorable Andrew Foy, was also present, and in his remarks he stated that he always wondered how it would feel to be recruited, going through the whole process and arriving at the final day with anticipation. He advised them to be the best they can be and to seek knowledge and experience as officers. He said, and I quote, "Always follow how you would want someone to follow if you were leading, and lead how you would want someone to lead if you were following, because that is all a part of being the best version of yourself." He also stated that they must be fair because the greatest lawbreakers has been the most respected for a fair and assertive officer, and by being consistent and having a purposeful mindset, they would succeed. He concluded by congratulating the cohort number 4. Now, of course, the Commissioner of Police, Michael Matthews, in his remarks, congratulated the 14 graduates for completing their cohort and also the rigorous 6 months training. He reminded them that the first day of their swear-in ceremony, where he told them that they were welcome to leave if they felt that they made the wrong decision, but no one left. Now, this is a remarkable state, Kyla, where he said to them, they persevered, and he is happy to see them at the end as full-fledged officers of the force. Other officers included the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, and much members of the audience were there. But at the end of the day, we saw where 14 persons were now joining the force, and I think it's commendable, it's exciting, and I think that we should continue to support them in all areas that they want to be, because at the end of the day, they are being a part of our environment where we are looking and protecting and striving for a safer environment. Now, in this cohort being deployed to the directly after training concluded, he joined with pride with the entire organization on the success in finding, training, and delivering good police officers. Now, Commissioner Matthews concluded by reading a quote from special thanks to the cohort. He said, "We are thankful for being able to serve the people of the Virgin Islands with favor and affection, malice or ill will. We would not do that, and at the end of the day, we will do our best to ensure that they are safe." Now, President of the H. Lavely Stoutt Community College, Dr. Richard Georges, was also present, and in his remarks congratulated the cohort as well as the instructors, dean, and staff at the H. Lavely Stoutt Community College for works done and produced during the training. He expressed that he loved to see not only the technical part of policing, but also the human side of the career. He stressed the importance of the commissioner's ending remarks because it reminds us all that we are part of a wider world, and that also our gifts and curses are being a small society, which we are part of. One gift being that the change is quicker to implement and the impact is greater on a smaller society. He concluded by saying that we must make sure that the value of others, especially being police officers, that we have to deal with the good and the worst of people. A wonderful situation here, Kyla, where we see them joining the first, and we welcome them. We wish them all the very best.
Awesome story. Such a great cohort.
Yes.
As you see the picture there, you can see some young faces
Yeah.
in the crowd. And I'm sure being a police officer is not an
Of
easy
course
job
not.
to
I can
have.
only
And
imagine.
to just imagine that these persons stuck it out, and now here they are, an officer of the law, willing. And I really like the statement about serving with affection.
Yes.
And not malice. So that's a great statement. So I just want to congratulate all that entire cohort of officers that's coming out of this program.
Awesome.
Now, as we move on, in the House of Assembly last Friday, Premier of the Virgin Islands and Minister of Finance, Honorable Andrew Foy, he reported a 10% decline in revenues received by the British Virgin Islands Financial Services Commission in comparison to the same period last year. Premier Foy was relating to the period of January 1st to June 6th. Now, this revelation was revealed after the Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Marlon Penn, asked the Premier to present a detailed breakdown of the revenue from the financial services for the periods of January 1st to June 3rd for the years 2018, 2019, and 2020. Now, viewers, hear a clip where Premier Foy states the revenues from the BVI FSC for the time frames that were stated above and the reasons for the decline this year.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Financial Services Commission have furnished us the figures appear in the table below, but I'll also read them out for the respective periods. That is 1st January, 3rd June, Mr. Speaker. That's 1st January, 3rd June, 1st January, to 3rd of June 2018, 1st January to 3rd of June to 2019, and 1st January to 3rd of June 2020, Mr. Speaker, exhibiting the collections from each of its relative divisions. However, Mr. Speaker, please note that because of COVID-19, the amounts would have significantly changed, as we realize $10,856,350.31 drop off in 2020 thus far in the same period in terms of 2019. But that's expected, Mr. Speaker, given a few reasons. One, given that everyone was shut down for COVID and most of the business for this territory were also affected by COVID because it was worldwide, so no one could have maintained the same amount of money that they were making anywhere in the world. But Mr. Speaker, in terms of revenues received from the Financial Services Commission, there's a breakdown in terms of 5 categories: Registry of Corporate Affairs Division, Banks and Fiduciary Division, Investment Business Division, Insurance Division, Insolvency Division. And the total from the 1st January to the 6th of June in 2018 was $1,655,032.02. That was figure again from the 1st of January to the 6th of June in 2018 was $116,655,032.02. And then we look at from the 1st of January to the 6th of June 2019, we look at $110,403,066.34. That's $110,403,066.34. In terms of the 1st of January to the 6th of June in 2020, all these are within the same period, but this one for this year, of course, the drop-off is clear, and the reasons for the drop-off is clear. $99,546,716.03. As I stated, that total was $10,856,350.31 drop-off from the period of 2019. So, Mr. Speaker, I present these figures for the Honorable House. As everyone knows, that is a worldwide pandemic that we're going through with COVID-19, and the challenges that we're experiencing in financial services is not immune.
Now, viewers, Premier Foy attributed this decline to the effects of COVID-19, the pandemic. Premier Foy said in the House, which we saw in the clip previously played, and he said, as everyone knows, it is a worldwide pandemic and we are going through COVID-19, and the challenges we are experiencing in the financial services are not immune. That was a quote from Premier Foy. A point that was then raised by Honorable Marlon Penn was that it seems like the industry have been seeing a steady decline through the years. Now, Ron, taking a look at the numbers between 2018 to 2019, for this period, there was a decline of approximately $6.2 million. In 2019 through 2020, there was a further decline of approximately $10.8 million. So yes, this year's decline was attributed to the pandemic. The industry has shown this trend even before this. Now, Honorable Penn asked if the Premier sees any leveling out or stability in terms of revenue or business activity in the industry going forward, which is a really good question. Now, Premier Foy replied by saying, and I quote, "We are seeing signs with the industry that are very encouraging." He also mentioned, and I quote, "There are some other new areas that we're going to be exploring, and we'll be coming to the House with some legislation that we feel will help this industry into a new direction, which will allow for more revenues." Now, this was just some news coming out of the House of Assembly, Ron, and the financial services industry have been carrying the BVI for quite some time, as it has been our main pillar for a very long time. But here we see in those last statements where Premier Foy is saying some new things are coming forward, some new legislation as it pertains to financial services may be coming to the House in short order. And I think it shows us that with everything has to evolve. And just like our financial services industry, we must evolve to keep and to stay relevant in that space. But also, too, out of the House of Assembly, we've been seeing many legislations that persons may not necessarily agree with.
Correct.
But I think in this space, the BVI is trying to diversify ways of making revenue. So we'll definitely be staying on top of this to see how this turns out.
Carla, I agree. The financial services has been taking us a very long way, but at the end of the day, with the not only the pandemic, but the ever-changing course of economies across the globe, we have to be vigilant, we have to be creative, and I think this is yet another opportunity for us to advance. In addition to that, you mentioned or related to the point of some of the legislations being passed in the House of Assembly, and while persons may not agree, at the end of the day, it is not a course of religious beliefs, but it is a course of saving the economy. And I think that a lot of persons within the community, both on the religious side and business community, need to understand that. So we look forward to see what happens.
Most definitely. Now, viewers, we have lots more for you in store. The BVI Black Lives Matter protest. It took center stage last Saturday, and former Scotiabank BVI Managing Director, she penned an open letter to our youth. Now, all this and so much more when 284 News returns.
I love you, Penny. Run, Forrest, run! Fire! Man, I'm sick of being in this house. I just want to go to the beach for all go just one day and gather to the garden. I'm sick of being in this house.
Having withdrawals from being stuck in the house for so long? Are you tired of looking at your old photos and daydreaming about your next vacation? Well, BVI Staycation is back, and there's so much to choose from. For more information on upcoming deals, follow us on Facebook at BVI Staycation. Get ready, BVI, for an adventure in paradise. It's time to vacation where we live.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, as I mentioned before the break, now on Saturday, hundreds of
Indeed.
residents gathered to support the BVI Black Lives Matter march. Persons gathered to call for an end to racism, inequality, colonialism in the British Virgin Islands and the world at large. The march commenced at the Noah Lyde Positive Movement Park in Roetown and proceeded to the Queen Elizabeth Park, where there was a ceremony. The ceremony consists of speakers such as Dr. Drexel Glasgow, Mr. McCoy Hendrickson, Mr. Javon Klein, and so much more. Now, selections were rendered by Aaron Parlon, better known as the Jedi, Amberly Crabb, and our very own Javon Wilson. The ceremony was moderated by Mrs. Angel Cameron, who did an exceptional job, if I can say so myself. Amongst the protesters, we saw the Governor Augustus Jasper, Premier Honorable Andrew Foy, or Deputy Premier Honorable Carvin Malone, Representative for the 2nd Honorable Mitch Turnbull, Representative for the 5th, for the 7th, and territorial members Honorable Neville Smith and Honorable Shari De Castro. Now, Ron, when I tell you our leaders blend in amongst the protesters in plain clothes, just marching and showing support to a cause, to this cause. The ceremony was ended with persons symbolically kneeling for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, which was the length of time that the police officer knelt on George Floyd's neck. And I think what that really symbolized, Ron, when you think about 8 minutes and 46 seconds, it seemed like it's not necessarily a long time, but as persons knelt there, you really realize how long 8 minutes can really be when someone is in pain. And the turnout was simply exceptional. Persons of all races, age, religion joined in solidarity to support one cause. Now, the oldest person in the crowd, for one, I can see was about approximately 90 years old. We met a man who was 93 years old, and the youngest was maybe about 1 year
Nice.
old. Okay, it was definitely a powerful afternoon. And for persons, viewers, if you weren't able to make it out to this event, be sure to catch the full coverage of this event on our Facebook page at 284 Media, as we spoke to people along the route, and as speakers continue to echo, there was one consistent message which people are saying we must continue to have these conversations, and it must not stop here. Racism will not stop that Saturday afternoon, but we must continue to have these conversations. So persons can stay tuned to the @BVI Black Lives Matter on Facebook for more conversations surrounding racism and more here in the BVI.
Indeed, Carla, a pleasant afternoon, a wonderful afternoon, a beautiful afternoon spent in the beautiful British Virgin Islands with young people. And I must admit, and I'm going to push it, and a lot of you are going to get tired of me saying it, but the younger generation of this territory, we are leading the chart whether you like it or not.
Definitely.
Nicoy Hendrickson via Donovan Hodge, or via Hodge Donovan,
Yes.
led the cause, of course, with a number of others, Miss Angel Cameron and Miss Amberly Crabb, in really pushing the message. And a lot of times what we fail to understand is that something doesn't really impact us until it's one of our own. And one of the things that I found very profound in Mr. Hendrickson's comments was that, are we going to really understand the significance of what we're pushing until it's one of our own who's in college and we get the call, and the dreadful call? Is that really what it's going to take?
Most definitely.
So I'm so proud of our young generation for leading the cause, and a beautiful evening.
And also too,
A beautiful day.
as you spoke about it, the younger generation just charging ahead, as you said, notable names, Nicoy, Via, but also Javon Klein.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
think persons know the work of his father, but Javon is really forging his own path and becoming
Absolutely.
his own self, and becoming an activist for important causes worldwide and even in the BVI.
Yes.
So as you said, the young people are really coming up and really leading the charge, because we want to see the world just to be a better place in general.
Indeed, and now continuing on the conversation of Black Lives Matter, an open letter from former managing director of Scotiabank BVI has penned an open letter to the youth of the region and by extension the world. Now she speaks candidly about her experience with racism and the one thing that she says will set young people apart. In her letter titled "Excellence is the Greatest Weapon Against Racism and Discrimination," she writes, "When I was 8 years old, I told my mother I wished I was white. Growing up in the 1960s in London, many of us saw prejudice and discrimination and accepted it as part of our life. I was called a gollywog and monkey at school by my white classmates. They made fun of my plaited hair squares, saying they can play hopscotch on my head. I had a white friend in class who lived near me, and we walked home together after school. One day her mother saw us walking together. The following day, my friend told me that she is not allowed to walk with me anymore. At 8 years old, I knew exactly why, and that is why I wished I had blue eyes and blonde hair and I was white. I didn't know black people were being portrayed. I didn't like the way black people were being portrayed. We were called colored in those days. But as I got older, I learned to truly love my blackness, and I developed a burning desire to be faster, smarter, and better than my white peers. I wanted to be so darn good that I could not be ignored, so I worked hard to achieve those goals. I never wanted to feel inferior again, and the way I felt when I was 8 years old. Now, when I applied for a banking job in the British Virgin Islands, I was hired only because my typing and shorthand skills were so exemplary that I could not be ignored. At that time, only lighter-skinned blacks were employed by banks. Back then, and perhaps even now, there was a skin color discrimination even from our own people. It was also not uncommon for boys to chase after light-skinned girls over darker-skinned girls. Some parents even told their children not to marry a dark-skinned person because they wanted fair-skinned grandchildren. Now, discrimination and prejudice among our own must have been a horrible thing, but my confidence, not arrogance, did not allow that to bother me. Besides, my job was more important than building a meaningful relationship with any man. I had a goal to work hard and support my mother and siblings, so I remained focused. I look back now and smile. When back in the days I would hear things some people would say, remarks such as, she is black but beautiful. She's quite attractive for a black girl. Whenever I was at a conference call or in a meeting, a boardroom with all men, I was never intimidated because I was always prepared. And yes, always that little voice in my head saying, be so darn good that I cannot be ignored. I've sat at dinner tables with dignitaries, royalties, TV personalities, prominent politicians, and it never unnerved me. I always said to myself, they put on their underwear the same way I do, 1 foot at a time. Now they are no better than me. In fact, whenever I entered a room, I strutted like a peacock, head high with an air of confidence and pride, always the center of attention and never a wallflower. To my young people, remember Eleanor Roosevelt's quote, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. The massive protests we have seen following the tragic death of George Floyd are inspiring. So many of our people who are activists back in the day have horrific stories to tell, and many, like me, at one time accepted racism as the norm. Can you imagine what our people could have achieved if not for the 40 years of bondage and oppression? I am proud of today's young people, black, Latino, Asian, and white, for taking up the mantle and fighting for the cause of justice and equality. But protests must be followed by perseverance. And remember my advice, be so darn good at what you do, you can never be ignored. Those are the words of the beautiful and talented Miss Joycelyn Moraine, who is the former director of Scotiabank BVI. And when she echoed those words, strut like a peacock, I could see her walking in and out of Scotiabank, strutting like a peacock. Confidence, not arrogance, but understanding that you're worthy. Whether a male or female, you're worthy. As a black person, you are worthy. It is so refreshing, Miss Moraine, to hear your words. It is so refreshing to see you touch the lives of the younger generation, despite not being in the BVI. You are still tackling. Joycelyn Moraine is of Antiguan descent, lived in Montserrat, I believe, and she's now retired in Miami, Florida, and still echoing her great words. We are so thankful. Thank you very much.
I am not normally lost for words,
Yeah.
but this letter I think should be printed off and given to every black youth, but also to every black woman, brown skinned woman, because some of the sentiments that she echoed, as a brown skin, darker skinned woman, I do understand. You're pretty for a black girl.
Yeah.
You're pretty, she's pretty for a black girl. That's something that's always been said, and I think something that we have to realize, that colorism is also a thing. We have discrimination amongst ourselves as black people, and that's something that must stop. But as she said, be so darn good that you cannot be ignored.
One of the things that, in not only that statement, but she reminds me so much of the Becoming by Michelle Obama. It's a book that I bought my wife and my mom, and they enjoyed reading it. But the empowerment that comes from it, I think, is so important. And I think that's the constant message that we have to continue to do every day. We have to build our young people up. We have to encourage them. This is not something where you can just speak on it and leave it, be. And as she said, protests must be followed by perseverance. Protests, again, must be followed by perseverance. In our daily walk, in our daily talk, we have to persevere for the fight against racism and other equalities within our territory. So I think it's so noteworthy and it's so important.
Most definitely, Ron. Ron, on that note, I think that our newscast is running out of time, and such a beautiful note to really and truly end on. The words of Miss Joycelyn, who spoke so and wrote so eloquently to the black youth here in the British Virgin Islands. So we definitely want to thank her for that. But we are running out of time, Ron.
And before we go, we want to remind you that the Park and Ride, that's going to begin not this Monday, but next Monday. So a lot of persons have been transitioning, and we're going to get more into that story, but a lot of persons have been transitioning as it pertains to the new capital of the
Yeah.
road town and the traffic. So we're going to get into that.
I'm definitely loving that. But we do want to remind persons to follow us on Facebook at 284 Media and 284 BVI on Instagram as well as Twitter. And of course, get your daily news updates at 284media.com. Viewers, I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes.
And I'm Ron Grant. We will see you tomorrow. We're 284 News, your source for honest and impartial news right here and straight out of the beautiful British Virgin Islands.